So, just jumping right in, I want to have a conversation, or I just want to, it's not a rant. I want to talk about the various forms of spiritual and cosmic energy that you or me or anybody who's trying to wake up with any of these means might actually use. Um, Everybody knows that my main source of energy when it comes to all this ascension stuff has been the Akadua. The Akadua is supposed to be an alchemical energy that is somewhat solar based or refined through our solar system, perhaps. Uh, that was, or, well, I'll just start with the rest of it. That is, it's highly transformative. It's alchemical in nature, meaning it changes and transmutes things as it comes into contact with them into something better than they were before. It has different varieties. It has different, colors and shapes and things and all that good stuff. And it can be a vehicle for not just ascension, but enlightenment, awakening, and to enter into, you might call trance states, but more, it can be a tool to use to bend reality. I'll just put it that way. And so, in that sense, it's much more in line with shamanic work and things like that. It's much more in line with like magic than I would think like Reiki, which is a very, high light type of spiritual energy or spiritual chi, I would call it. That's what it is. It's why it's called ki. Um, and that's good for healing and putting things in order and stuff like that. But the Akadua is different. It builds. It just, yeah. Um, and it could be a seat of power for anyone who's using magical means to explore things, for soul retrieval, for healing work, for personal empowerment, etc. Um, and that's what I've always used. The thought goes that it was created or used originally by the Atlanteans, and then during or after the Atlantean, when they were working with it, they were calling it the Shro, and the Shro is supposed to be this holy thing. This comes from Crowley. If you look in Crowley's work, The Lost Continent, you will find all of this stuff like word for word. Except I think he used a Z, Zro, which is actually the Hebrew combination of letters and word for semen. Now that actually makes sense because in the energetic layers of the body, or specifically the male body, the sexual fluid is like the essence, and that's what they're getting at, that this is an essence energy. Okay. Um, Through reading recently Coyote's stuff, the Shro is supposed to be essentially uh, the saliva of Brahman, or the semen of Brahman, or the absolute essential, essence energy of the absolute, of the supreme ultimate, of the source of oneness, and in that sense, it is genderless to all these references to male sexual fluids, probably only because, I don't know, because men dominate everything and it's stupid. Um, but it's the essential energy of the thing, so that's what we're talking about here. The Atlanteans were supposedly working with that and using it to do all these amazing things. So they were directly contacting the supreme ultimate energy, directly contacting source energy, and that quite yang aspect of source energy that is um, constantly growing and constantly enlightening, and all of that. Coyote also calls it and relates it to the prima materia of the alchemists, the stuff that you start with, that is everything. He also calls it the stuff that all of the dimensions are eventually made of. So you see how it is beyond, beyond, beyond. It is this ultimate energy, right? And that is so difficult and powerful and jarring to the system by the time it gets down to our biological and energetic and spiritual mechanisms that we can't really handle it directly. We can't really handle it It would be like, drinking the nectar of the gods. It's like, yes, the light comes out of our eyes and we see, but then our bodies can't handle it and we disintegrate in a pile of nothingness. Like that kind of thing. Um, so supposedly the Atlanteans were working with it, and then a tiny, tiny little piece of it, a seventh, was saved when the Atlantean cataclysm happened. So, however you want to imagine that, let's just say that this culture was degenerating for thousands of years, which it was, that there were certain priests, shamans, and magicians who were still trying to hold on to whatever they could of this wonderful Shro essence as people were abusing it and using it in weird ways and for their own diabolical magical purposes, and probably magically thwarting these other good guys who were trying to save it for whatever they could, and were able to use up some of it, and whatever lasted through the Egyptian epic, through the Mayan epic, and all of that stuff, whatever lasted of the Shro was basically what we could call the Akatua. Then, specifically through the South American lines, it was cultivated through shamans and the Toltec lines and all of that, and got a good place for a while until eventually it probably by way of affecting the actual biofield of the earth used enough around it. That's what they were trying to do, Coyote and the others, using the Akandwa enough all around the globe to create this sort of extra layer of holy energy or whatever, so that the Shro could be more easily accessed by us. So it's one of those things where, like the Oneness Diksha movement, where it was like, we're trying to enlighten a certain number of people by a certain time so that we'll make it. That's also what Coyote and his people, including me, we're trying to do when we're like spreading this stuff around and initiating people into the Akadwa and getting them to use it. We're hoping that there's enough to propel us through to the next phase. In their thinking, that was 2012, and that's where I start to like sort of, I'm not sure about that. But whatever. I don't like putting dates on things anyway. So there's that story. Through my own personal work and all of this stuff, I've often found that whatever energy you want to attach to, you can get to. And I've found that there are so many different rays and vibrations out there. Just pick one. And a very, 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 very long time ago, before I knew what any of this stuff was, I started trying to work with the Shro directly. And I could get something. Now, I feel that I'm at that level, and I feel that I can work with it directly as a person can, The Akadawa itself has changed and gone through different levels of transformation, and taken me, of course, to different levels of transformation, and a lot of people through different levels of transformation. And I've always had the sense that eventually it would sort of recollect the Shro essence. And lo and behold, I start reading Coyote's stuff again, and this energy, he says, is available to everyone now. And I'm like, right in line. This is another thing, and I was trying to get at it, and get at it in another video about the teachings of a Toltec survivor, one of Coyote's books, and his other book, The Golden Flower. I just made a short video on that. I was trying to get at the fact that I am astounded when I read Coyote's stuff, because I honestly haven't gone back and read all of his stuff except as it pertained to the Akandwa, because this is all the stuff that I know. Obviously, I just explained all of it. And now that I'm reading his stuff, I'm like, this is me. Like, this is exactly what I've been saying. This is totally the vein that I have been in, and I didn't even realize that Coyote was in the same exact vein. I mean, it's boggling my mind how much we sync up. And people would be like, what are you talking about? He's been your teacher for years. You've been talking about... But we have not actually worked that much together. Like, we haven't sat down, we haven't journeyed together. I haven't gone through any specific programs with him or whatever. It's just we've had a couple meetings, and I've been to 3 or 4 of his different workshops and stuff like that. It's, other than that, there's no real reason that we should sync up in so many ways. And yet he's constantly trying to deprogram you. He's constantly saying that basically all of the stupid new age platitudes that y'all are swallowing every day on Facebook and Twitter are stupid outright lies and a bunch of BS. He's cussing at you every once in a while to just like be a normal person so that you can talk about spirit and not like, it's this big hoity toity thing, and all this stuff is like realness. Also, guess what? I can bend your reality for you. It's like all of that magic making it real. You know what I'm saying? And that's good stuff because a lot of people think that it's not, and a lot of people just latch on to this like version of sipping coffee in the morning and you're a beautiful rainbow. Move on. Hate Trump. Everything else, whatever. It has nothing to do with spirit. Um, Even these things, when you're really connecting and you actually break through to something that you're channeling and you're like, oh my gosh, I can feel this presence and it's amazing. I can finally do this. Now I have access to all this spiritual information, and yet that also is a lie. You know, in a lot of ways, guides are just a scapegoat. I'll leave it there. He and I, case in point, really sync up on a lot of this stuff. They're really not very nice when it comes to talking about how pathetic modern culture is and how much it removes you from spirit, is the way a New Ager would probably say it. Coyote would say it's all bullshit and lies. And you need to wake the fuck up. And you're not going to do that by going to Starbucks. Um, the further that he takes it is not just getting in your face with words. The way that he takes it further, that's what I meant to say, is your reality is flipped upside down. And if you want to wake up, even though you might not know exactly what that means, you want to see past the veil, then you have to absolutely turn your world upside down. This world, as you're living it now, you have to see things backwards. And that is Nagualism. That's Castaneda waking up and seeing that the shadow world is more real than the light world and that it's holding everything in place and that I'm not looking at the right things when I look at the world. That is the illusion. Everything is flipped for you. If you want to take it into a literal scientific way, that's also true. By the time light reaches your eyes, the image is reversed. And so what you're seeing is literally turned upside down by your own brain. Okay? The world is upside down. What's really interesting to me is that all of this stuff is not just a crazy coincidence. I don't think that this Toltec way of thinking lines up perfectly with the Taoist way of thinking. These Taoists were Toltecs, and I don't mean literally as in they were the same group of people, but I think they sort of were. As in, there were these orders of people that may have survived, let's say maybe just one or two or three, the Atlantean cataclysm, who went around to seed peoples around the world with these spiritual ideas and these templates so that eventually some of us could wake up in a real way. The Toltecs that went to South America eventually did start a culture, and that culture degenerated, right? And so they were left with the idea that this is not the way to do it anymore. In order to preserve this stuff, we need to do the opposite of get together and try to hoard it and make it real for as long as we possibly can. Because when you do that, it'll all disappear eventually. So what they did is just like, you know, inserted themselves into these different places. That's why you'll find all of this stuff that Castaneda's benefactor is talking about has nothing to do with his actual culture of the Yaqui Indians. The Yaqui Indian tribes have all of these different ceremonies and ways, and they have a sort of like, I think like a solar-based cosmology, but they do certain things and they have, different ceremonies and teas and drinks and things. And none of the stuff that Don Juan did had anything to do with Yaqui culture. It was all something else. And I think that was he is a remnant of the Toltec lines, And whether someone directly says that or not, I don't think you will find the word Toltec anywhere in the Castaneda literature. I think that that may have also been his own interpretation and twisting of his own experiences with this benefactor. I'm not sure that it wasn't also really literary in order to impress people in a certain way to get them to go, what the heck is this? I want to know more. Again, another shock. Now I've completely lost my train of thought. Don't even know what this video is about anymore. So I'm talking about the different types of energies. So let's say that through all of that stuff and the Toltecs coming away from Atlantis and all of that, we're spreading this energy around, this holy energy and power in order to try to empower people and get them to wake up in a very general sense. I think that now is time for the full-on show. I think that's where it is. I'm not sure I will even be using the Akadua anymore, as I believe that the Shro is really strong enough reforming itself. And I personally have been working with this energy for the past 2 or 3 weeks, and it's changing my world. And I can't go into too much detail because it's almost, not almost, it is weirder than the Akadua itself. One other, again, I did want to say some things about the actual nature of the energy. People talk about the Akadua, and it's got this sort of like extra layer, like it's got this like slow, like honey, or like this field of softness around it. It's difficult to describe. And within the Shro, I find that exists all the time. And so when I start channeling it, I very much get down the spiral channels, that sort of wispy in between invisible energy as I try to channel this energy through my own mechanism. I find that that's the stuff that I see first. Then it starts to get to this like opaque, phosphorescent, light, glowy green stuff. And to me, all that really represents is like how like a plant, like you see that and it's like green right there and it's sort of glowy, like how a plant is sort of like glowing with this green fluorescence, I would call it, from the Taoist perspective, even though it was a German who translated that word and just decided to use fluorescence. It could have just been like golden radiance. But that internal thing, when you see a plant and it's like just popped out of the soil and it's just like really, really bright and green, it's like that internal stuff and that energy, which is also like creamy and stuff. It's really weird, man, and I don't know how to I could channel it to you. It would be interesting. But yeah, I think that this is the time for the show. I think that this is like, I've always wanted to recollect it. I'm like, what's missing? I think what was missing, and in the entire process and all of this stuff, is this stuff is essentially a substance. Especially when we get it down to the level of the biological mechanism, it starts becoming a substance within the body, especially. And these different substances, the whole alchemical process is you just basically get as many substances together as you can and start mixing them together until things start happening, And so, since this is the substance of all, the source and all of that, it should be everything. And so when you have a piece of it, like the Akadua, and it's doing these things in your system, basically that transformative alchemical substance in all its forms is going to collect all of the different types of chi, universal chi, earthly chi, tree chi, plant chi, like the stuff, the different beings and angels that you connect to, and they give you certain types of energy. You can do different purifications, call on different Buddhas and blah, 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 blah. Physical purification was something like the Taoist smile, or using pleasant, blissful blissful states in order to cause an actual physiological reaction within the body through emotion and somatic bliss and all this stuff. All of that purify, eventually becomes various substances within the body that get mixed together and create something like the Shro, or create something like what I would call the golden elixir. There's a difference. The golden elixir is essentially the substance that happens in the body when one has been in contact with one's own essential nature for long enough. Essential nature, or original nature, Yuan Shen in the Taoist whole canon or whatever, is your essence self. Coyote talks about the essence too, and that we don't really have a soul to begin with, he calls it a soul, and that through continual contact with the essence, eventually we collect enough substances in order to create the body for the soul, or the body of the soul. Whew! This is exactly the same as creating the golden dragon body in the Taoist vein, or the rainbow body, or whatever. You're working and attempting to get to Yuan Shen, your original nature or essence is the same thing as the original nature of the Buddhas as well, or the Buddhists. You're working to get there. You eventually get to this level where your essence energy is functioning into your biological mechanism, and you have this golden elixir, and you achieve this state, and it is a sort of form of enlightenment, but really it is the creation of the body. The Taoists call it the birthing of the golden fetus, or the golden child, or whatever, or the golden egg. So does Coyote and the Toltecs talk about the golden egg. Whoa. All of it is the same thing, man. It's just that there are different methods of getting there, sometimes different ways of describing things. So we have to create a soul. Taoists never really talk about creating a soul per se, but they will talk about creating these different bodies and vehicles, right? And all of these things are various layers of substances, right? So you have the Taoist model, which is Jing, Qi, Shen, and you can apply that to absolutely everything. So it is my general understanding that we would have basically the Jing of the non-universe, so the black hole Jing, that space that keeps us all in place and gives us substance eventually. The potential energy, that would be the lowest level, and then the next one up is essentially where the earth stands, that level of more creation, but it is still, to a Taoist, it's pure yin. Then a level, and that would be like chi of the universe, you know. And then a level above that would be the shun of the earth, let's say. And the level of shun of the earth, according to Taoists, is the same level of jing of humans. So we're in the middle. So then it repeats the same thing. You see the pattern? So you have jing, qi, and shun of the earth, or the universe as it stands. In the middle, I think you would more find the energy of the earth, and then beyond that, you have the spirit of the earth. The spirit of the earth syncs up to the same vibration as the jing of humans, and then we continue. The chi of humans syncs up to this other stuff. Say that like it really is not the exact same as the chi. Anyway, you know, like, and then you can continue the model. So then when we get to shun, which is spirit for the humans, we have the jing of the cosmos, of the heavens. So the more yang stuff. And then the chi of the heavens, which would be like the realms of Reiki and stuff. And then the shun, this is just an idea, by the way, I'm just throwing this out there. And then the shun of the spirit of the cosmos is like pure freaking spirit. Doesn't get much purer than that. That would be like the Shro. Okay? There's my idea. So that's just one way to understand a model of it. I'm sure there's a billion different ways in between. I just wanted to throw it out there. So then you have this pure essence energy. What makes the Ikaduwa so weird is that it is essentially the Shro that's been filtered through a bunch of other things and our solar system. So when my friend Jordan, who is very wise and very intuitive when it comes to sensing energies, I gave him the Akadowa, and he's like, I just don't feel like it's solar, man. Like, I feel like this stuff is like all the way into the bowels of the earth. Like, it's so deep. And I'm like, well, it is. And the Akadowa, especially, even though it has all these different varieties or whatever, the Akadowa, especially, is very earth centric and very solar system centric. So this entire matrix of solar system energy that we're working with on this solar system level, that is the Akadowa. It's got, to me, 9 varieties or 7. You could pick however many planets you want in the system, but it pretty much matches up. And that's the level of prismatic energy that we're dealing with on this level. To go beyond that, we're going beyond the solar system. We're going to a galactic level, perhaps. That might be more akin to cosmic shun, whatever. All right, so I'm going to stop there. It's just these different layers of energy, and I think that now is the time for all good Shro to come to the aid of your country. Just kidding. So, yeah. So I think what we have is our version of Shro, and that's the Akanduwa, and it's filtered through all these different things, the earth, blah, 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 the sun. And when you deal with this stuff, it's way weirder, but also way simpler than you might think. And any of these in-between levels or working with it directly will cause you to wake up.